Boy, it's like, I don't know, so, you know, I don't treat it.
You're good.
Yeah.
Those were our seasons here. When we had season tickets, they had 12 months. They had 15 of but I just know that it's so you were right, that was the year this was you about that. But I just knew the year, because I knew the year they were going to I didn't realize those are actually so we had just sort of some transition. And then it was the first show that to the brain. We said, we're going to start getting motivation. We did great there. The W5, we got 12. And I didn't have to sell my tickets for the cafe sale. Most of the students in 11. I'm not sure. I know they love some
We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. The first item on the agenda is the planning report.
Good evening. We've got a few things on the report for this evening and some action items for y'all this month. So you should all have a copy of this, the report from the September 9th planning meeting. So we had preliminary plat for Trillium subdivision. This is the subdivision on the west side of town that we're still working on. We've got a few items that are still being reviewed, but this one's been tabled at this point in time, but everyone should be pretty familiar with that. We've already approved the PZD for the zoning and everything. So the next item is we have a preliminary plat for the ranch. This is property located on Morningstar Road. It's not yet incorporated into the city limits, so there's some things that need to be worked on there. And as of this point, it was also tabled. But the next item, and one of the ones that y'all are going to have before y'all this month, is the rezoning for C&K Engineering. This is a PZD for the property that's located on the corner of Ford and Highway 265. They had proposed to do some multifamily city. Oh, sorry, 264. Yes. Hold back from when I lived in Fayetteville there. The planning commission came back with a PZD request, which they fulfilled, and have worked through multiple meetings trying to get a working PZD document in place. And the planning commission voted to affirm this proposed request and send it on to y'all this month. So we'll be talking about that here later. The next item is a lot line adjustment for the Wolf family. This is part of Ozark Acres up in the northern end of town. It was parcel, family owned. They had 2 pieces of land. They just moved a lot line essentially to create 2 roughly 6-acre tracts of land instead of 1 smaller and 1 larger. This one was also approved. We had the rezoning for James and Cindy Weir. This is located at 116 Rainbow Road. This is the other item that y'all will be looking at this month. This is sorry, I have that wrong on this. This is approximately 40 acres, not 25.55. They were requesting to rezone it to R4, and that has been changed to R3. So the applicant asked to amend it during the meeting to change it to R3 single family zoning. And the planning commission voted to affirm that proposed rezoning change and move it on to y'all. And then the last item is the rezoning for Darrell and Teresa Bush. This is located at 579 Ford Lane. This one was 25.55 acres. They were also requesting to be rezoned to R4 single family residential from A1, and that has been tabled at this time. So the commission is still looking at that. I'm going to skip the city council action items. I'll go over general updates, then we can move into the action items since that's the stuff you'll have before you this month. But just general updates. We've been working with Garber on the zoning code. You know, we identified some key items, and we've still been working on the future land use and master street plan maps. We've gone back to the planning commission. Had a discussion with them at the last meeting on that. I believe all of y'all have received an email pertaining to that. We've also still been working with the watershed on the legacy project for the city with the CNU conference. I'll be having some meetings with that later this week. And that's about all there was on the general updates. So, moving into the city council action items for this month, we still have the master street plan and future land use maps. We've all received emails, I believe, on that, like I said, and if you have any correspondence or anything or items of interest that you want to discuss, I'd be glad to have those discussions with you. Juliet's here to answer any questions if there's other questions that we have. I will say that there is one change that we're going to make, and that's just a shortening the length of where Lillard Lane runs along a bordering property. We're going to bring it back to where the development is actually proposing. It was something that we had put in when we were making the map, and going back and looking at it doesn't make sense to have it extended all the way when we know it's not going to. So we're going to make that minor adjustment.
That's the one that it was going to go through that property, basically, and now you're saying it's going to go back.
It's still going through the properties. Just a second.
Yeah, pull it up. Let's look at it.
Just a second. Okay, so you can see Lillard Lane kind of centered there. Here's 112. This is existing Lillard Lane right here, and as Lillard Lane is existing, it goes to about this point. At one point, we had just taken it to the property line and up to correspond with this future street section. I think this was what Bentonville had shown, if I'm not mistaken. And so we had tied it in, but we know that Lillard is not going to go essentially past this point where my cursor is. That's where the existing development that's looking at doing upgrades to Lillard Lane is stopping it. So if anything, we're going to stop it there, and there would potentially be through streets to get it to Stoggins. But it would never really align with this street section that Benville is showing here, coming down to Scoggins. And honestly, if you were going to stop this road, stopping it at the existing Scoggins makes more sense than trying to drag it all the way down to a non-existent road. So you might as well just stop it up at Scoggins and have Scoggins be the future main east to west connection, even though it's there right now. I mean, it runs from Morningstar to 112 already. So that's just a minor adjustment we're going to make, and it's based on the existing conditions of what's actually being proposed up there. So.
Is Scoggins ours?
Yes, parts and parts not.
Like the
shared.
part where you turn off 112 and that triangle there. I've been on that road. Yeah, that's Scoggins.
So the southern half would be ours right here.
So that is ours with that crazy dip down and turn where you can kind of like form a triangle.
In this kind of
Yes.
spot, I would assume yes. I mean, not knowing how much of that is RDOT, and honestly, this is going to change. They're going to go through and change all that with the RDOT.
The Scoggins Road is caved.
Parts of Scoggins Road is caved, yes.
Okay. That part I know it is.
And it appears to be, yes. Again, how much of that is some of RDOT's right of way versus, actual cities that city can work on? I don't know.
Just to be clear, it doesn't mean that there won't ever be a connection to Scoggins. We're saying the collector off.
There can still be local streets.
Yeah, right. There'll have to be a local street grid that's put in there. We have someone that helps it. And there is a stub out just outside of and they will be required, like subdivision code requires them to connect that stub out. And then, they'll push through with whatever kind of street grid they have for their development. So there will be a connection to Scoggins. It just doesn't need to be a collector. And that was left over before the final decisions were made on that subdivision. Was when we had the draft done. Right, so we didn't really know how chips were going to fall. But now we have sort of a week to go.
Okay, that makes sense.
And I have one thing, I'm sorry, did you have another point on there? Or
No, I was just pointing that out. That's the only thing right now that we discussed removing, and it's a good point, so I think we're going to take that off.
Okay, well, I like the point you made that, that's Bentonville right there with Lillard and connecting to Scoggins. So when I had brought up last meeting, I want to make sure that our city's different. We get a lot of drainage from other cities, so I don't believe we should be comparing our zones and our, this is my personal thing, our town based on what is happening in Rogers and Bentonville, because Cave Springs is very unique with the karst area, the drainage, the flooding. So that was one of my concerns, and then also watching the Planning Commission meeting, how multiple planners had said they wish they could get that back to them. So by council tabling it, we're giving them a chance for that extra eye back on it, since I recall, listened to the meeting, at least 3 planning commissioners said that they wish they could get it back, and they were under the impression that the council had already passed it.
Are you sure that they meant getting this back? Because
Vision plan, land use map. If you go back and listen to that meeting, yes.
But they just met, so they got it back, right? I mean,
Yes.
you just met the other day, right?
But was that
Yeah.
voting meeting though?
No,
It was a work
So
session.
did anything new come up?
no.
they're looking for guidance from y'all.
Yeah, if you're saying it needs to go back to them, they want guidance. That's what the email that was sent out to all of y'all said.
So we're good now, went back.
I mean, y'all had it, for 3 months at this point. I mean, I would hope that if you wanted changes, there was issues, you would have spoken up and mentioned that by now.
Well, I'm going to step back, because again, when I listened to that meeting at home, they were under the impression that it was passed. I believe it was Nancy Fallon, and there was one other one that said, I wish we could get it back. That is why I asked the council, I recommended tabling. So what their thought process was in that moment that they said that in that meeting, I do not know, because I wasn't there to ask what their thought process was. So I understand we've gotten it and we've tabled it. I think, Mark, you tabled it once because you had a lot of other stuff going on. Because of the flooding and everything else, and we literally only got that packet of papers that day of 28 pages. So when we don't have time to review it, then yes, we can table it. But then the reason I sent it back is because I listened to that whole meeting, or that I sent back, that I asked to table it and send it back.
So do you have any comments now, or?
Yeah, they're looking for direction from y'all.
Okay, I'll reach out to them and talk to
The
them.
past meeting, because they want to know, if you send it back, what you want to change. And I don't know, they may have been talking about that specific road that went with Scissor Tail when they were saying they wish they could get it back.
Well, they
Like,
were
there's
talking about,
changing.
they were actually talking about during that point in time was these ones that have been tabled for R3. So they were talking about Rainbow and was it the Reader's property, and they were talking about the chicken houses. That was when they said when they started talking about density. And the mayor chimed in, and that you remember part of that discussion, Mayor. So I did listen, and
So the future land use more than the streets.
It was both.
yes.
They were talking, it started a little bit with with this property in Willard and that discussion, and it carried over very much into the other two properties that you just mentioned, the Bush property and the Bush property. And there were some questions and concerns, I know, on the one property about the way the terrain is and drainage and the size houses or size lots in particular there. And that's where the turkey houses are. And I think part of it was just, there's a level of uncertainty because we've only done, according to that's a fairly high karst area. And we've only used karst recharge area type development once, and that was Allen's Mill Phase 2. And what it did with drainage was amazing, how quick it complaints downstream, but at the same time, there were questions there because I think to some degree it's new and there's a certain level of fear because we have seen flooding in the area and so that was kind of their response.
Can you remind me what the color codes all are again? Right back up.
Yeah.
Why don't we just sweep down through it real quick? Maybe something will come up with.
We'll get some other stuff that we can pass on with it.
I was gonna say, while she's eating that real quick, and not looking to throw it out there, I think it's a good idea, this arrangement, but on behalf of the people on this side of the table,
It's hard to
I think
see.
it's pretty rough, and
Hard
then,
to see
yeah, that,
Okay,
and same kind of thing, the work session, I know we don't have public comment, but public is still right there, and I do feel sort of weird just being like, lots off, I don't know, so.
Last time we did this, we got good comments on it.
Yeah.
And so we tried it again. If you don't want to do it this way, we'll do it.
Yeah, we don't need to fix it right now, really, but yeah, I think in the future,
If we could just kind of like,
yeah.
We can,
I don't think
bring it out.
if we could just do it like we
We
normally
can try those things, sure.
I don't know.
You want a paper now? See, on the table, like a large one?
What is the red line to the right?
That's 112. It's delegating Highway 112 as an arterial boulevard. Morningstar, to the left is delegated as an arterial boulevard.
Okay.
It's just, and you can see that at the top of the map, where it says the legend, Highway 112 arterial, proposed 112 arterial, different arterials. But I had moved down here because Mark had asked about that, so you were asking about the colors.
Thank you.
Yeah. So like there's brown, downtown core in, like the downtown area, and there's a transitional mixed use. which is generally speaking along kind of the arterial boulevards, like the state highways. And then we've got a mixed-use corridor that it's kind of just in some of the like the downtown area. We've got neighborhood transition, which is kind of spaced throughout town, transitioning into residential neighborhoods. Then we've got a mixed residential, a neighborhood residential, and then we have residential medium density, which would be our standard subdivisions. All of the single-family home subdivisions that are existing. And then we've got a residential estate in some areas where there's existing residential estates, and then ag, and then like a recreational open space in the like the watershed property and some of this green space that shoots back into the karst area, and then kind of along the floodplain, or the creek back here. And then we've got a public institution space that we created, and then a light industrial space.
It's a lot of colors.
Yeah, what I've just passed out, it's in the same order as the legend on the map.
Is it in which? Is the colors in one of these pages?
It doesn't have the colors, it has the, yeah, it has,
Okay.
and it's in that same order.
Okay.
And then here we try to get examples, pictures from other places that are similar to what, we're envisioning for the type of development that you have in those types, in those areas, if that's helpful as well.
So when you're deciding on this, are you deciding based on larger major towns around? I saw some Fayetteville, Conway. I love the examples. Colorado was one, but I feel like we're unique in ourselves. Are we comparing our zoning and our?
This isn't zoning, this is future land.
Yeah,
use.
this is.
But no, but I'm just saying in general, are we comparing that to like Rogers and Bentonville, because we aren't Rogers and Bentonville?
I would say we're comparing it to best practices that are
Yeah,
standard.
can I jump in just for a quick thing, David? Because I think I hear what you're saying, Erica, but at the same time, the comparisons, insofar as there are going to be comparisons, are going to be to other towns, right? I don't know what the alternative would be, and so I agree with you.
Smaller towns like,
Sure.
we're not Bentonville and we're not Rogers.
Sure, and we're not necessarily, we're not Johnson either, because we may be a similar, smaller town, but they're all going to be a little different. My question here is, when I looked at, it's designed as a resource to help guide future development. But here's my question: if we adopt the future land use map and the vision plan, does that strip the council of any authority to change anything in the future? To
Well, no, we have to go back there and we should be changing this every
change
5 years
direction,
anyways.
to amend the plan, to
No.
hire other advisors to come in the future, to because that's part of what I'm trying to understand. Is I do understand some of the resistance to some individual things that have been in the map. Some of those things have been addressed. I just want to make sure that the public especially understands what it is we're talking about and voting on here. This isn't something that we're setting in stone that, generations from now, they're going to be looking at this, that we strip them of their ability,
Absolutely not.
we still retain the full ability as city council to approve every project that comes to the city. Ultimately all zoning decisions will still go through planning and come through city council the same way.
Correct.
I just want the public to understand that this is not some kind of dispositive thing. It is supposed to be, I think, a tool to help, to help us develop as a city as we grow, right? And we are unique as a city, but all cities face similar challenges, and I think that's an important thing to recognize too. Is we have talked a lot about flooding in recent months, and it's something that the city is focusing on, right? And that's my question is, we hire an engineering firm to come in and to try to figure out solutions. I'm not really sure what else we're expected to do. Do you want me to come to your property with a shovel and a protractor and try to figure out drainage? I don't know how to do that. I'm a lawyer. I don't know any of the requisite disciplines to even get started there. What we do is we hire experts to come in and give us recommendations, and then we can either listen to those recommendations, or the alternative is just to what? Pull it out of what? I mean, you want to just make it up? I don't know what we're expected to do outside of listen to the experts that we bring into the city to help guide us on this. They're not the Illuminati, they're not bad guys. Daniel's an engineer, okay? He's a civil engineer. He is here trying to help, okay? And I understand we all have different issues that affect us that are part of growing and urbanizing an area, okay? But there is a way of approaching those things, and I think the way to do that is to be methodical and to be reasonable and to be scientific about it. And so when it comes back to the land use, when it comes back to the land use map, I want the public to know that this isn't dispositive. This doesn't tie our hands. It does not keep us from continuing to adjust to new information, to new challenges that the city faces as it grows, and that we are taking those issues seriously. All of us are taking those issues seriously as they come up in turn. So,
I guess I did have one question.
yeah.
Now, with the land use and then the zoning should fall in place with the land use, correct? Or no?
It should fall in line with what our future land use is determining.
So now, if a vote would come, and that was Justin was here, and the council, the plan would send it to us, but a vote would come, and feedback on the public say the council voted no. I wonder if that would have put us to litigation because we didn't follow exactly why did you pass X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, this is broad. Yes, I understand what you're saying. So this is one tool that you use when making decisions, both the city council and the planning commission. This is one of them, right? And I do think it sets a general direction. If you look at, since you brought up density, if you look at the densities that are outlined at each one of those, you'll see that there are a broad range of densities, and some of them overlap with one another, right? And we do that on purpose because, this is a future-looking plan, right? And do we have a crystal ball and know exactly what's going to happen? No, we don't. But, to his point, we're using our best professional understanding of kind of where different parts of the city are, in regard to being developed, what the current economic market is for development and the types of development that you have, and we're kind of projecting what makes sense, right? And the other thing that we take into consideration is, you need to have developments in place that the city is going to, that's going to help you financially in the future, right? If everything is 5-acre estate lots, then you can't pay for the water lines and the sewer lines. You just can't, right? Because there's only going to be one user for this many linear feet, right? And the other thing is that we're trying to give you something like a lot of this was kind of small adjustments to the downtown area that came from the downtown plan that to me make a lot of sense and that you really want to have in place as 112 develops, because it's going to help protect what you have, and it's going to help you get good outcomes for your downtown. It's going to allow you to have a little more housing in proximity to your downtown, which is great for people who build businesses here, right? Because they need people who can go to them, and it's going to help create the community that you want, right? And build on what you've already started. There's nothing, I promise you, there's nothing menacing about this plan. It's not crazy. We're not trying to make you into Bentonville or Rogers, I promise. And
Well, I would add that there's pretty minimal changes from the last map. I mean, the changes have mostly been focused on the property that we have brought into the city that don't have a designation now or future street plan now, and we use the downtown for it. Otherwise, it's pretty minimal changes elsewhere in this map. Because
Can you remind me
And
when the last map was created?
December 2020 was when it was adopted.
So I think it was
Just before I started, actually.
Yeah.
It in the vision plan, right?
Right.
And you know, to kind of to JJ's point earlier, is, you know, these are living documents, and we're revising it in the vision plan now. You know, I mean, every 5 years, it's not uncommon. And the vision plan, it's not set in stone; it's a living document. But you know, much to like us saying, like, you know, this is the future street plan. Like, we're having these discussions about Lillard and stopping it back here. Well, I can guarantee you that if I had this map in place, Lillard would have gone straight through this subdivision over to Luna Lane, and it would have been through street.
But we didn't.
But we don't have this map in place, and we can't enforce that.
And I do think that there have been some other street connections too that have been missed opportunities. And I understand you don't want to align everything with other cities, but from a transportation network standpoint, you know, there's a lot of efficiency if you do align, you know, selector larger roads with other cities. So we want to be aligned with what they're doing. And some of the things that have, you know, been problematic have been on the west side. There've been things that have been annexed, and they don't line up with, you know, Bentonville's master street plan. We've been trying to do a lot of contortions to make sure that, you know, there still is, connectivity between them, because you want that connectivity. You want people.
If we're not promoting connectivity, we can't stand in here and consciously drive and complain about, you know, traffic problems around east and west of congestion. If we're not promoting connectivity with the other cities around us, we're making people drive and jog all over the country to get somewhere.
Can we look at, like, say, Rainbow example, for example, where we're going into, say, the Weir's property, where we're going into rezone, and we're going to put possibly 40, 80 houses in there on the finished road. Rainbow, and what would we require of them under the street plan?
Okay, just a second.
And
So-
to your point, anytime we like do a zoning decision, we should pull this up. Say that's where the property is. This is
Well, that's why it's included in your packet. So I mean, once we get into the weirs, in just a minute, I have the snippet of the future land use in the packet. So, you know, what we're talking about is this 40-acre square right here, and, you know, we'll go over it again more in depth. And then, you know, here is future development that is coming out of Rogers, I believe. You know, this line designates Lowell. So there's Lowell here, Rogers here. They've made sure that there's a connection between Rogers and Lowell with this Nova Avenue here. And then there is actually 2 streets stubbed out, 3 streets maybe, onto this property in Cave Springs. I think it's 3. I think there's 1 at Nebula too. It's not showing up real well though.
So is that the RM and down, those 3 lots? Where's the 40 acres you're talking about?
Right here. It's
The 2 bottom ones not.
yeah, so there's 20 acres here and 20 acres here roughly. You know, this has got a losing stream corridor going through it. It's very hard to develop. They have to stay so far away from this. It's hard to get. I mean, they're probably not going to get, you know, 3 to 3.5 homes, you know, per acre. I mean, it's not like with all of the karst and the losing stream corridors and the streets and everything else that they go through, it's going to be necessarily very dense. But there's connectivity that is going to be promoted through these other stub outs into Rogers. And people will be able to either come over to Rainbow and go north or south, or they'll be able to go through these other Nova, Helios, something like that, and they can get to 63rd or 60th Street. And they could possibly even go north up to Shores and get out of the subdivision that way. And those are local streets. You know, those aren't collectors that we even plan for. But if we have the connectivity there, we're going to ensure that it gets built out and we can provide that connectivity to other areas.
And that's good for y'all too, right? That means that you're not throwing all of that traffic directly onto Rainbow, right? Some of it's going to go through the city of Rogers. And that's, you know, so I think that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can throw any of those traffic out there, to be honest with you. 5 to 15 when you go down, right before you get up the hill to Allentown, where it goes down, you get 2 big trucks going, like, they rarely fit. Yeah, so, like, that's the problem that I just want to ask us up here, is like, why we may have done things differently.
But honestly, like discussions about, I mean, it's good to have these kind of discussions, but the reality is too, is that you have a subdivision code that requires, you know, when they're putting a substantial amount of impact on something, that they have to do a traffic study. And then to your point, when you're using data, right, to understand what percentage of the impact is going to be from that subdivision, at the peak hours of traffic, and what improvements need to be made that are warranted specifically by that development. And in reality, you're not going to figure out all of that on a future land use and master street plan. Now, the collectors that we have in place, most of those have a 2 or 3 lane section, right? Because the 3 lanes becomes important, right? If you have a lot of people making left-hand turns. And I believe that, it's up to the discretion of the city engineer based on the traffic information that they're given with that subdivision, what section has to be built, right? And so all of those things, we're looking out for all of those things in this. I do think, this section, I don't think is changing much at all from what it was before in the future land use or master street plan, or this part of the map. But to David's point, you have areas that have been annexed, and you have areas, that were traded with Rogers over a year ago that don't have, a future land use category. And I think and you don't have a master street plan that's been updated in 5 years. And I think it's imperative that this happens pretty quickly for y'all to have good outcomes, because you're getting developments every month, right? You got 3 zonings in front of you now. Those are going to be subdivisions in a couple more months. And, and I'll just tell you too, there's no perfect plan. It doesn't exist. Just like you can't make a perfect plan for your retirement, right? You look the best you can and say, well, this is what I think is going to happen, and this is the type, some money that I'm going to maybe need, and you do the best you can. And you can adjust this thing every month if you want to. I wouldn't recommend that, because that would be a lot of work. But you can, right? If you see something that's not working, then change it. And if you know things specifically that you think that need to be adjusted, if it's density ranges or something in the future land use, then please let us know, ASAP, because we want to get that information in and get it, to the planning commission, and then get it back to y'all so we can get it in place. This is, about good outcomes for y'all. I don't personally have any stake in this game. So I just think, I don't know, if you wait for perfect, then you're gonna keep, trying, and you're never gonna get there. But it's okay to make adjustments later.
Can you go back to what Rainbow there too? Because density was talked about in that planning commission meeting where you were with the Lears property, and we were talking about Rainbow. That other zone is on the other side of 264, where those jerky houses are. And so 4 turns into Rainbow, which that's where they're talking about. That's where the other zone is. Could you go down to that one? So there's that, and if you come down, it's across from the Hillcrest.
Mm-hmm.
So that's more houses, and then you have Hillcrest that's not built up, Brentwood, Ridgewood, this possible chicken house thing, and then the Weirs property. With the way those roads are that you pointed out, especially Rainbow, kind of crowded, it's more narrow than Ford, but it is. So, to me, it's a lot of density, and when you're looking at R4, how many houses is that?
R4. What's the density for R4?
Yeah, what is the range of components for R4? Like per
I
acre?
think it's a maximum of 5.
I wish.
But there's only 10% that can be smaller. But I'll tell you honestly, we did the R4 zone for y'all because you were doing developments that were getting variances at the time, like Allen's Mill and things that got variances at the time for, yeah. Honestly, Brentwood doesn't qualify for R3. There are lots in there that do not meet the R3 standards. But just so you,
I said, Brentwood, the way it was done with drainage and everything else is kind of unique.
The drainage situation was terrible. So I don't think anybody's going to contest that. Yeah. I've seen the videos. I haven't seen it in person, but I've seen the videos.
But then that's the same area where the drainage impact is on Brentwood. We saw what Hillcrest did in Brentwood in the development. And so as a resident that is in that area, and the concerns that I'm hearing is,
Yeah.
that's a lot. We already have Hillcrest, we have one going on Brown and Ford that are 0.6 acre lots. We have Turkey houses maybe, and then on the other side, 264 by Ridgewood, and then this with, that will connect with Broad Ice. Those are just my concerns.
Let me just, yeah, and I understand your concerns, and let me just tell you that like Northwest Arkansas, this is not a concern that is unique to Cave Springs. Cave Springs is a unique place, I'm not saying that, I'm saying everybody's still in this pain. And the reality is, honestly, like I went through, you have that email I sent you where I looked at like what the actual units per acre came out to be in both Brentwood and Allensville Phase 2, both of them that, you know, basically qualify for R4 zoning. I can't remember, I'll pull it up and I'll have David send it to you, but in the end, you end up with something like 3.6 units per acre, right? And if you change the zoning, because you have constraints that are based on lot size, right? And I'm sure, you know, everybody knows Northwest Arkansas is not Iowa, right? You can't just neatly chop up everything. You have wasted, you know, kind of space because you're working around terrain and all different types of things. And you don't end up with even the actual max density, hardly ever. I'm trying to think if I've ever seen a time, you know, where that really comes out when you have a code that's kind of written like y'all's. What really happens is that you take a development that you're talking about one with 80 houses, right? What you're probably talking about is the difference between like 75 houses and 80 houses. That's what you're talking about. And I'll just tell you, like the traffic problems that you have on Rainbow, they're not going to be impacted by plus or minus 5 houses. Like they're not. You know, it's not, but that's the reality of the densities that you're looking at and what happens when you actually start to create a subdivision. And I understand, like, it makes sense to, you're trying to do what's right for Cave Springs. I'm trying to tell you, like, yes, you should 100% try to work on, you know, fixing the drainage problems you have, but I don't think that the densities, we can quibble about them, we'll change them to whatever it is that y'all want, right? It's your map, but.
Can I ask a question just
Yeah.
for this question mostly again for the benefit of anybody who's watching this, but again, whenever we have these zonings again, so whatever, let's call it R4, there's that sets a kind of a standard, you know, there's like a minimum standard, or I guess you'd say this is the loosest way that in terms of how many houses could go on there, right? Or the maximum number of houses.
Right.
That every project that comes through, it will go through engineering, it will go through planning, we'll be able to evaluate those things. Yes. And what you're saying is that it will come up to be, you know, probably less houses per acre than that maximum allows.
Correct.
And I think what I'm trying to get out here is that, you know, as the city council, we're the governing body here. I think at a base, we want to be less restrictive in how people potentially are going to develop their land in a macro sense, and more restrictive on a case-by-case basis.
Right.
So, you know, every case that comes through, we put the scrutiny, you know, we put it through engineering, whatever else. But in terms of just whatever the top level is, I understand that being just a little bit, you know, a little bit more liberal in terms of, you know, what people are allowed to look at when they start planning, and then, you know, eventually get to whatever number of houses per acre are actually tenable. The other thing I want to mention is that, you know, I grew up in Cave Springs. I lived here, you know, outside of when I went to college, stuff like that. I lived here my entire life. I moved back, bought my childhood home. So I've watched Cave Springs really change. You know, I lived on a dirt road that nobody else lived on when I was a child. And Brown Road still needs a lot of work, but it's paved because of Wellington, right? Wellington came in and it created the demand for a paved road there, and it also brought in the money for the paved road there, right? And the thing is, we are a developing, growing city. We do have infrastructure that is lagging behind where we need it to be right now, but I don't think the answer is to, you know, to create too hostile of an attitude towards new developments and new growth, because I think that in a lot of cases, those developers are going to pay for those water lines to be extended, those roads to be extended, and everything else. And so, I think that it's a balance to recognize. And again, like I said before, this map doesn't mean, okay, this is R4, so any developer out there in Northwest Arkansas can come start shoving 4 houses per acre or whatever else it is. That's just not how anything works in reality. And so, I understand that we want to make sure that we get this right, but the amount of time that we've spent, I love what you said about it being perfect, and I use this quote a lot, is don't let the best be the enemy of the good, right? So surely, in some universe, we could maybe arrive at some perfect map. I don't know how that's possible, and I think it's interesting how confident some people seem to be, and that with limited city planning experience, right? That they would just perfectly know how to do that. I think that this gives us a good base to work from. I think it makes sense with how the city is developing. I do want to keep an eye on many of these things as they continue to develop, but I don't know that if we spend another 5 hours conversing about this and looking at spots on the map and talking about the density, that we're going to suddenly arrive at a more perfect version of this map. And so my point is that this is the high level, case by case is where we need to be getting more granular, if there's a place to get more granular. And again, we have engineering, we have city planning. I am not an expert in those fields. If those of you in the audience, if you think you are, please run for one of our seats next time. All 6 of us ran unopposed. So, what we are doing is the best with the information that we are given. We have to take each development. People have a right to develop their property if they own it. If you don't want them to develop it, buy it. So people have a right to develop their property. This gives us, I think, a good base plan. I'm happy at this point, but I want to make sure that everybody's questions are answered. I also think that a lot of these things are things that, if we have questions about specific parcels of land and things like that, I don't know that open session is the best time to go over that map, but I think we've discussed it quite a bit tonight. And like I said, my perspective is just that this is supposed to be a guiding force, it's not just positive in any way. So I think
that's a key, guy.
Yeah.
It just helps us make decisions, but we can question it.
Next question.
Yes, sir.
The car study goes south of East Lowell Avenue, 264. How far south does it go? I know it goes down behind the pasta field, and that water drainage on the other side of that Weather Creek also runs down into that. So how far south does that car theory go?
So the cave, is roughly right here. And it's essentially a giant funnel. And it kind of shoots back like this. I don't know off the top of your head, but I can get it as far as the full picture of the map. Usually I just show the areas pertaining that are.
I haven't looked at the map in a while.
Yeah,
But
it's a giant funnel.
So the area that you're talking about in that blue area there, that's in the car theory.
I think part of it.
Parts of it.
I think it kind of goes diagonal through. But here's the thing, you have regulations already on the books, right, that y'all passed that say how you develop in cars. So it doesn't matter if it says it's a density of, this many, maximum of 6 lots per acre or whatever. They have to follow this CARS regulation. So if it says you back off a losing stream 200 feet, well then they're backing off 200 feet. Like that, they have to design to that. Yes. So, and that's precisely the reason that was put in place, so that you have those standards that qualify anytime you're in the direct recharge area of the cars.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you can talk about it, but it doesn't, to me, it's covered. It's covered in a regulatory way that supersedes, a policy document.
So I just want to say one thing. I came in late, so I'm sorry, I might have missed it. This is a living document. I was involved in 2020 when we created that. And obviously, the changes that are in it, good or bad, I'm not discussing that. I just want to make sure the Planning Commission is comfortable with that, because last time there was a question that a few people on the Planning Commission, they were not on the same page in one accord regarding that. So are they all approved, have they approved that?
No, they're waiting to get they wanna see if y'all have any feedback, and then it's going back to the next.
My,
Essentially, they said, y'all send it back to us, why didn't you send us back feedback?
so
I mean, if
my-
you're gonna send it back with feedback, so that's why the email that was sent out to y'all requesting feedback. If you don't have feedback, I mean, we're still gonna, we're still re-looking at it, but.
My feedback is, when we created it, we had a vision for it. As long as it's within that vision, I don't know if you have it in front of you to read it or not, because if we spend 2 months creating that vision, you would involve it with that. Is it aligned with that vision or not?
Yeah, I mean,
Well, we
there's,
didn't make major changes from even the previous map as far as from the vision plan. A lot of it didn't change exponentially other than the downtown and like the new areas we've annexed in.
that email that you got, there's one of the links in it, I know there's a lot of links, we were trying to give you all the information possible. One of them says, like, if you wanna see the detailed changes from, the previous 2020 version of this one, then you click on that one. And then we've gone through in detail, what has changed, like, is it the boundary of the future land use category, or density, or what, and then, so that you have that information. There have been some changes. I do think that, the planning commission is probably gonna tweak that area that we were just talking about on Ford Road. I do think they did express they had some thoughts about that, making more of it, I think, RM, and then points of that neighborhood transition back. But honestly, those are all the same kind of categories that were there before, we just kind of changed the way they were organized.
And R4 zoning will fit in RM and neighborhood transition, both.
And
Just for the
RM,
record.
I think is like,
So even if they do pull neighborhood transition back and it's replaced with RM, R4 zoning still fits in RM. It doesn't change the fact of what they're requesting.
So that's one of the feedback that came, and also I agree with what JJ said, with the exception of that, I do think, at least I feel like I like to look at everything and question everything. That's just the way I feel like maybe we're too long at it, I don't know. Not that I don't trust it. For example, we asked for a traffic study recently on one of the projects that's going on, I don't want to name it, and they said, well, we do the traffic study after the project is completed. Well, I don't agree with you. And now, right now, we just said that we're going to do traffic study before. So are we doing it before or after? These are things that I want to make sure we're all on the same page, because I do want subdivision going on in that distance, but I do want to make sure it's major and we are not affecting other people down the road.
well, the people, I don't know what project that was, but Walmart, can be worried about traffic studies, and then I know Springdale School District, I don't think you have any Springdale School District in your city, not very much of it.
Just prefer not to
But
name it back and.
Even if they do, whatever, first of all, I would recommend that you do that. I would say, you can provide a protected traffic study up front, and then, we can go from there.
There's 2 different traffic studies I think we're referring to here. One is the one the engineers do with the developer, and that's what she's referring to, that we require them to do a prospective impact type study on what their development may cost. The one that y'all asked me to find out about on that other property, and I went to the RDOT, the district engineer, because there was some that said, we want a traffic light, we want them to do a study like they did down here, and they told me that until they see the impact of the development, they will not do one. And they don't do one in advance, that RDOT does.
RDOT, yeah, well, they play by different rules than the rest of them.
Yeah, and so what she's talking about with engineers can be done in advance, and we do require that, but what they're talking about, the final actual impact.
So if it's subdivision right now, that's going to mean that study is on pilot level.
Well, no, we can require it. It's not explicitly required. If, through the review process, it is deemed that it's necessary to require it, we can require it.
Okay. So that's something that particularly, if we go in R4, I guess this is not part of these, but if you go in R4 section, I feel like it doesn't cost much to do a study, we need to make it. That goes into subdivision requirement, I guess, both the ordinance that we're putting in. So, I just wanna make sure we have some check and balance, that's it.
Well,
Otherwise, I'm all
Yeah.
Well, I can just.
In an area like, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, just let me clarify something, because I shouldn't want to be misunderstood. See, I'm not saying, hey, let's just shoot from the hip. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is that your concern here about the traffic studies seems to be something that we would need to change through a resolution. I mean, if we want to make it required for every, instead of discretionary for planning, that would be something not in the future land use map, but something that we would need to change in that resolution. And so, I mean, my point is that we have a finite amount of energy and time as a council, and so what I'm trying to do is focus more on each project as it comes through, and the traffic study is something we want on every project, and adjust the resolution to reflect that, or the ordinance, but I don't think that we can solve that through this document necessarily. I think we would have to approach it through some other means, and so that's what I'm saying is I just want to make sure that we're focusing on project by project as it comes through, and not thinking that this is going to be some panacea for us. That if we get this right enough, then we don't have to each project.
Well, that's kind of the point I was going to make, is that it can be required. It's not explicitly required. I mean, there's situations where what's the point in doing a traffic study? I mean, if it was, this subdivision right here, when it's first put in, that empties out on the Ford Road, there's nothing else around it, what would be the point in doing the traffic study? It's a waste of time and money. But now that this subdivision's in, and this subdivision's in, and that subdivision's in, and that subdivision's in, and Redwood's in on the south, and Hillcrest is in on the south, yeah, we need to start doing traffic study in that area. So, I mean, case by case, area by area basis. I mean, that makes sense.
I think area that we put R4, in my opinion, we need to adjust our ordinance for subdivision and make sure that, I understand it's a different things, I mean, at different time, but my point was with that if you're gonna go liberal, not conservative, like you were saying, then we need to make sure our subdivision ordinance are same way, conservative, so we can kind of balance those. That's the statement I was making. And the traffic that you said, really, I feel like the traffic needs to be done. That's just me. I mean, it could be wrong, but that's just the way I feel about it. And I'm all for, I mean, we need to have a master plan. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that we don't need it. I'm just saying that we need to make sure we have some check and balance in it, and we just in future with a subdivision.
And again, I just don't want like any of my words to be misunderstood to the crowd or anything. When I say liberal, I don't mean politically liberal or it's conservative. What I'm saying is, I think that when it comes to the government restricting how owners of land develop their land, we should be tailored in that approach as opposed to passing blanket things that prevent development. We should be tailored in a case-by-case basis. I think that is the responsible way for government to interact with landowners and their ability to develop.
And one thing that is the reason they do they have flexibility. There is, and I don't know if it was R3 or R4, but at the corner of Rainbow and Shores, there's 3 lots that actually, or 3 or 4 houses that were actually considered a small subdivision, have sidewalks, and yet 3 houses are not going to impact the major impact on any road. And so the traffic study for a 3-lot subdivision is probably not needed where anything over a certain size might be. But there has to be some flexibility for those smaller situations.
I said R4 and Mr. Avery, don't misquote me.
Well, I don't know if it was R3 or R4 in that situation, but it's very small lots.
Clear number, how many is R4 and R4? How many lot can you put, how many houses can you put per lot? I mean,
The minimum lot size is 70 by 100, with 10% of the lots being 60 by 100. I mean, and that's all that we have. It doesn't give an acreage breakdown, I don't believe. It just gives a lot size.
Usually follow this or this. That was my feedback.
Do you have anything else to go over on the map or future land use streets? If not, I'll move into the 2 rezonings. Since we were discussing this one, I'll just start with it. So one of the rezonings that was affirmed and sent to y'all was the Weir property that we were discussing on Rainbow Road. It's approximately 40 acres. It's 2 parcels. It's currently essentially just single family and agricultural use. They've got a house, a pond. I believe the pond is being utilized for some of the adjoining subdivisions retention. But the applicant has requested to rezone this originally to R4. They've amended their application to be R3. So, again, R3 is single family homes. We're just talking about the rezoning at this point. We did discuss, it's listed as residential medium density on future land use plan existing, which R3 falls in line with. It is located in the karst area. It has a losing string corridor on it, so it creates some development challenges there, obviously. You can see it there, residential medium density. The package should give you a call out for what residential medium density aligns with. So, residential medium density is single family detached, prominent in the existing neighborhoods in the city. So, R3 aligns with that.
One thing I do like about this property is that there'll be possible 1, 2, 3 possible exits towards the old Rogers side.
There's definitely 2. I think there's a third. It didn't show up on the map a little bit, but I'm pretty sure there's a third.
I do like the fact that there's an alternative to Rainbow.
And they're going to have 2 exits out on the Rainbow also. But yes, there's multiple areas where we're promoting connectivity in that space. And yes, okay, it shows it right there on my zoning map. You can see that was the third one that was a question I wasn't sure about. So,
where?
see right here, you can see that road. It wasn't showing up on the base map picture or our future land use map picture we had over there. Yeah, so it probably wasn't in place yet. So yeah, there's going to be like 5 exits out between all this. So I think it's really promoting a lot of good connectivity all around there. So this is something that was recommended by staff. It was in line with all the surrounding subdivision types, promoting the connectivity, east and west. Really don't think it's going to be, really don't believe it's going to negatively impact anybody in that area. As far as single family homes are. Do you have any questions on that one specifically? Okay. Move on to the next one. So the next one that was affirmed and sent to y'all for review and consideration was the PZD project out on Ford and Highway 264. So this was prepared by C&K Engineering. It's 1 parcel. It's approximately 7 acres. Yeah. It's adjacent to Highway 264, Redwood subdivision on the north across from 264, Brentwood to the south and to the east, and then Ford Lane to the west. The zoning that is designated is currently C3 neighborhood commercial. So commercial zones that would, not negatively impact residential, facilities in close proximity to it, usually offices, things that aren't open late, maybe a restaurant, something like that. The PCD was done because they were looking at doing a mix of multifamily and commercial on the property, which the existing future land use category promotes. So we'll get into that in a second, but the future land use category that is governing that actually promotes a mix of those. So the applicant's proposing roughly 8 townhomes, 2 commercial buildings that would have potential for lease spaces in it. Of course, they'll have their own utility facilities and things like that. But again, this is just a rezoning document. We don't have full plans and things yet. We're not to that point yet.
Those townhomes will be 2-story or single-story?
2-story. So this is listed as residential medium density. So it's saying it encourages connected, compact blocks, gridded street patterns, reduced setbacks. It also encourages traditional neighborhood development that incorporates low-intensity, non-residential uses intended to serve the surrounding neighborhoods, such as retail offices on corners and along connecting corridors. So essentially exactly what they're promoting and requesting to do. And I think the only items that we had was the staff comments is given the current zoning intent behind the original plating of the neighboring subdivision. We feel that the PZD was the best tool for allowing this proposed development. We talked about the residential medium density designation on the future land use map. Staff felt there was appropriate amount of commercial on the corner that they were proposing with the attached single family units that fits the intent of the future land use map also. And the Planning Commission voted to affirm this instead of going to y'all. And I can pull up the actual PZD document.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
When it comes to the commercial space that goes there, is that still, if this is rezoned, does the council, not the council, but decide what that is, or it needs to be decided with this PZD document? Because I did have a resident reach out about bar/tavern concern. I don't think it would be appropriate to have a bar open until midnight next to Brentwood, which is next to townhomes, and things of that nature, moving onto 264 and Ford, Rainbow, and all of that. So with this rezone to a PZD, the narrow, are we able to see what exactly could go in there? Because I am not wanting, I personally do not want a bar next to Brentwood, next to 8 townhomes, next to the church, but I know it would go next to a church. But,
So yes, we can tailor that in this document. We have that here.
but I'm not opposed to like an eatery / like a tavern.
Yeah.
C3 has a specific things that you do in it that's documented.
So it's like retail space and like, it's
Well, I understand, but so a resident reached out about that specific concern, because they were at the
Mark having conditional use. So
I'm sorry?
it's conditional use, so it has to go through planning and.
So that would, okay, so we
Yes,
still
sir.
have,
It's
okay.
listed in there.
There is a table of uses. What did y'all call it from originally? Was it C3?
C3.
Yeah, so they originally used C3. We had that discussion at the work session pretty extensively, maybe it's the last regular session.
And then.
They went through and revised it.
We're
The
at
balance.
the back section here.
well, like, any business that's trying to open, it's gonna have to get their business license in the city. There are lots of other checks to keep up.
Well, this is like, but if it's already been approved, like I said, I'm not opposed to like a tavern of some kind, but I don't think, bar.
Correct me if I'm right, C3 has a list of businesses that can go in it and
But this
Church
is,
across the street.
C3 did, or does, yes, but I mean, you know, they're changing this to into a PCD, so there's gonna be, you know, there's zonings in this document. But that's what they tried to stay within the boundaries of was C3.
So it,
oh,
it
okay.
lists those, and
It's
it's
right
like,
here.
Yeah,
Very beginning of the,
Was there a bar tavern on here?
yes, it's in, this is going to be.
okay. So in that document that y'all
Bar,
have,
lounge, tavern, conditional use.
yeah, we
That's
have,
the only thing that, like I said, as a council member, someone brought that to my attention, so I was just,
well, I mean, I would encourage y'all to go through that.
what?
You know, I said I would encourage y'all to go through that, I mean, because you still have to look through it. If there's other items in there that you feel are concerned, and we need to have a discussion about it, you know, later on. Again, planning commission and applicants and everyone, we've already, you know, looked through it. Felt like, you know, we had a pretty good working document here. But again, this is for y'all to review and make comments on, and you know, if there's some other things that you feel need to be addressed, then you know, we need to look at it and address it.
so David, what was on that, I'm sorry, can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
So what was on the C3 before that is, what has changed in this document? What are the changes?
What'd you say?
We've removed items.
Yeah, they actually took some items off. There were some items that were allowed in C3 that we did not feel would even still be applicable to this because of the strip mall type of facility. So what we did was we asked the applicant to go through, and if there's things they don't want, take it off. And if there's things that, so it's probably a little bit more restrictive than C3, to be perfectly honest.
Good, thank you.
Well, C3, like a drive movie on C3 or something like that. Good movie.
I don't know off the top of my head. I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you.
This seems better than.
It's neighborhood commercial, so I mean, C3 is still essentially be just about our most restrictive, adjacent to residential.
Yes, it is.
But
Okay. Thank you.
y'all good?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank y'all.
Thank you.
It is impressive.
The next item is the resolution for the property tax rate. It's that time of year again. And I mentioned a couple of months ago that I would bring a chart that shows the impact of the growth that we experienced through the expansion, the land swap. That's on the back or behind this. And my recommendation, and there's a typo in this one, my recommendation is to maintain, and I'll explain why in a moment, maintain the 2.54 mils that we are currently paying. And with the growth that we've experienced, it's going to impact the general fund next year once the property taxes kick in for Cave Springs instead of for Rogers. And when we get our census numbers back later this year, the sales tax portion that comes from the county and also the state turnbacks together is projected to increase the general fund by at least $258,000. The street and road department by at least $71,900. And the other thing that we're looking at right now, we are going into another huge growth spurt with the developments you were looking at, with other developments that are already underway. The city is growing. And with the growth, a lot of our needs are based on that growth. They have to do with fire department, police department, roads, and those are all things that other cities have started getting contributions from the development to help pay for through what we did a few years ago that's working with the water and sewer through impact fees. And I'm going to be asking that we start a study almost immediately and that we review the impact fees and what would be appropriate for the growth we're experiencing and looking at that for water, sewer, and not for water and sewer is already in place, for streets, for police, and for fire. And to take into account the equipment changes we're gonna need and some of the things that we're gonna have to do growth-wise.
Can I ask a question, Mayor? So you'll remember that when we talked about this last year, Mark and I, we thought we were fighting, but I think we at the end of the game that we might actually agree. My question is, we're bringing on this RABEY'S accounting and tax service. I know there's other stuff going on and that there's audit going on, but RABEY'S, is that, in part at least, the idea is to be bringing them on so that they can be doing, financial outlooks for the future of the city and things like, revenue, expenditures, stuff like that.
And he's going to start off working on the books and getting us back on our feet with our financials. Right. But that is going to be a part of the service. It does have a consultation portion, and that's going to be a part of what we're looking at.
Yeah.
And so, yes.
That's why I brought it last year, and that's still how I feel is, because I appreciate, the information that you're bringing us. I really would like the city to, before we pass a property tax next year, to have, consistent, stable financial advice and outside accounting services. That's something I wanted to see for a long time, so that, we can better predict what the future financial needs of the city are going to be, what revenues we're going to need to meet those, and it helps, give us a backplay for other things, like you said, like the impact fees. Just helps give us more information for that.
Which they require studies anyway.
Yeah.
They will be getting professional studies in each of those areas.
So that's all I'm going to say about it.
I'm sorry.
You're good to it.
Justin, these 18-wheeler development highways, especially the interstates, they pay a $22.90 highway use tax to help maintain their highways. Is there something we can do here for these contractors, these big trucks hauling in dirt and gravel and hauling equipment and everything with damaging the road?
We can look at weight limits. You said weight limits on the roads, and I would recommend that would be based upon engineering advice on the road itself. If it's certain roads and the way that they're constructed, that can't handle heavy loads, that's one thing. We can't do a tax on weight limits like the state can do in that similar way, so that we're constrained that way. We have to pay it through the sales tax we collect and the revenues we get on that back. That's kind of where we're limited. We also get a road tax, a 3-meal road tax. That's limited. We get half of that split with the county. So we're kind of constrained to those revenues.
I guess my question is more along what JJ is saying. Is there a rush to do this now as opposed to getting our financials in order?
It has to be done every September for the county to issue the tax.
That was why I didn't ask that other question. Yes, I know.
I have a real problem doing the front line, top line item, that looking at the bottom line, we haven't seen for 3 months.
And I understand.
If it was something, I'd say that it takes until the last week, that maybe we can do that, and get looked at beforehand.
Is there any way that it could be delayed through a proper process, or it has to be done?
I got the notification from the county to have it in September.
Justin, is there no deviation from that, given?
We deviated from it about 5-6 years ago when we did with the tax.
That was
yeah. So, but as far as the drop date, that date is, I'm not exactly sure of the quorum report. What happens is we certify the quorum report, and the quorum report adopts the village for the next year. I don't know necessarily whether that's going to happen because they meet twice a month.
I think they meet twice a month. I think one of those meetings is as they call it,
Yeah.
they're dealing with the whole,
I think at the most, you might, maybe you could squeeze in another meeting out of it, but we have to confirm that to see. I'm happy to do that, that's what.
The other question is, are we gonna have the financial maybe before next meeting that we have?
I'm working on them now, but I don't.
They have it, and we have it a few days before we look at it. See what Jeremy says, and what you said.
Okay, any further discussion on the text? Okay. The next item is the real estate exchange agreement. That's for the Trillium subdivision and exchanging the acre for acre for the water tower.
I can click that off, and Kyle is here as well to talk, but council in your packet is a form of a real estate exchange agreement. It's pretty straightforward. You may have seen it before, but it has to do with the 1 acre that's needed for the water tank site, and been talking about this quite some time with the developer on trading an acre for an acre in order to move the site a little bit. So this is the form of the agreement. We just wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page, and I know that I think the developers want to move forward to try to get this finalized. So Kyle, whether you wanted to add any more.
Sure. Thank you, Justin. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Kyle Smith, Leadership Properties. I think I was here 2 months ago for the annexation of the land that the new 1 acre water tower lot will be on. And we talked about this briefly, but didn't have language in front of you at that point. And so we're back with that. It does a couple of things. It requires that at final plat, we'll do the exchange. The reason we don't do that now is because we want to have legal descriptions for the transaction, and we want those to be accurate as built, just in case anything changes in development. Under this agreement, we will install the appropriate infrastructure for a water tower on the new lot. We'll install appropriate infrastructure for residential lots on the existing city parcel, knowing that at the end we'll do the swap and everybody will get what the plan. That is all contingent, of course, on your approval tonight and on accepting the final plat after the subdivision is built. And you may be wondering why we're doing this. It's for my banker, because they don't love the idea of us doing a whole lot of infrastructure on land that we don't own, and they pointed out that y'all will have an election between now and the time we finish, and while 6 of you got elected or ran unopposed, with Mr. Thompson over here encouraging folks to run, it makes my banker a little nervous. So we would like some assurances that before we start moving dirt, that we have your permission to do it, and that we know the exchange that's going to happen at the end. If you got any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Only correction is it'll pass next month.
Yeah. 2 weeks from today. This isn't a voting meeting, so.
Right. Well, we've got back in 2 weeks to cheer you on. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. And we're arriving at the time that's on our agenda for the fall meeting. So I would entertain a motion to suspend this meeting and come back to it at the end of the fall meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion by JJ, second by Mike to suspend this meeting. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign, and that did pass. Now we'll go ahead and open up the call meeting. Do I hear, or let's do a roll call.
Mark?
Here.
Here. Jeremy?
Here.
Mike?
Here.
Lindsay?
Here.
JJ?
Here.
Okay. And the first item on the The agenda is a resolution to authorize the negotiation of professional services with RABEY'S County. Mr. RABEY'S is here tonight. If y'all have any questions for him, you want to come up to the podium? And his resume is in there as well.
Thank you for being here, sir. I'm not going to grill you about accounting.
I'm sorry?
I'm not going to grill you about accounting. I appreciate you being here. I look at your resume. Thank you. Yeah.
Any? All right. If there's no questions, do I hear a motion to approve this? Got a motion by JJ. Do I hear a second? Second by Mike. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign, and that was approved. What is our, is it 46?
2025-46.
Okay. And the next item on the agenda is resolution authorizing the execution of a contract for right-of-way with our dot for the widening of the road. Do I hear a motion to approve? Motion, do I hear a second? Second by Jeremy, motion by JJ. Is there any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. That is item 47, and it was approved. I would entertain a motion to suspend the special, or to adjourn the special call meeting.
So,
Got a motion by Mike. Do I hear a second? Second by MC. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. That's adjourned. Do I hear a motion to move back into the suspended work session? Got a motion by JJ, second by Michael. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. And welcome back. We are in the back in the work session. Next item on the work session is the ordinance adopting water and sewer facilities for the city. This is something that Daniel will be able to discuss with you.
This is just adopting special water and sewer specifications. We work with Jeff Coldfeld, probably about a year, go back to go through the existing water and sewer specifications that we have and update them based on newer equipment, opinions on what will be better in the system, and those will be captured in this, and it's submitted to the Arkansas Department of Health, and they're approved at that level. We discussed it in the water and sewer committee meeting as well. It's just a formalized adoption of the specs. We're currently requiring developers to utilize them at this time as well.
If you want to review the specs, I have them in my office. It's 290 pages or so. So it was something I didn't print out for each individual, but it is something that we can get you a digital copy if you prefer that, or we can have you the manual copy. Any further discussion? Next item on the agenda is the coffee shop, please.
Okay, also in your packet, council, is the familiar red line of the coffee shop lease. This is the same version that we talked about at the last work session, the same changes that we had worked through and MC and I have talked about and brought forward. I sent it over to the council for coffee shop, and then yesterday she sent back saying that they were good with the changes with the exception of the addition that they had entered into I'm sorry, I lost the section. Section 5, I'm sorry, section 5 that had to do with the definition of the use that's there. I think I had put it in coffee shop and it's fleshed out to talk about food service and that they do in their business, which makes a lot of sense to go ahead and do that. So, with that being the case, if I told her I'll go talk to you all, see if there were any other issues. If not, we would have this ready for your meeting in 2 weeks.
Thanks, the lease is a very good result. It's good.
Okay, any other discussion? I entertain a motion to adjourn. Got a motion by JJ, second by Mark. All appreciate y'all's time.